A line stretches around the block. People are already pulling out their phones, filming TikToks before they've even placed an order. The lunch rush is so intense the entire menu sells out in under 2 hours. Online, the owner is celebrating another $3,000 day, telling everyone they finally escaped the 9 to 5 and found the perfect business. From the outside, it looks like the ultimate American dream. A kitchen on wheels, no massive restaurant lease, no $1 million build-out, just incredible food and money rolling in. It seems almost impossible to fail. But then, only 90 days later, that same truck is sitting behind a warehouse. The battery is dead. The bills are overdue. A faded for sale sign is taped to the window. So what happened? How can a business with customers lining up every single day still go broke? How does a food truck that looks like a guaranteed success quietly run out of cash? And here's the twist. It's not because the food wasn't good. It's because almost everyone misunderstands where the money is really made and where it silently disappears. The owner wasn't worried. Why would he be? Every weekend was setting a new sales record. One festival turned into two turned into 5. Catering requests kept pouring in. The line kept getting longer. Social media followers exploded. From the outside, it looked like the business was becoming unstoppable. So he did what almost every new owner does. He doubled down. He booked more events, bought more inventory, hired extra help, and spent even more time on the road, convinced that bigger sales meant bigger profits. But something strange was happening. The bank account wasn't growing as fast as the crowds. Despite serving more customers than ever, there was never as much money left over as expected. Every extra mile burned fuel. Every hour of overtime increased payroll. The generator ran all day. Equipment needed repairs. Food costs kept climbing. One hidden expense after another quietly swallowed the cash. And that's the trap that destroys thousands of food truck businesses. The biggest danger isn't finding customers. It's confusing revenue with profit. A food truck can look more successful every single week while becoming less profitable every single month, and most owners don't realize it until it's already too late. It won't be another food truck parked across the street that puts you out of business. It'll be the math hiding behind every single order you sell. And that's the lesson almost every first-time owner learns too late. Most food trucks don't fail because the food isn't good. They fail because the owners become incredibly good at the wrong game. They master attracting customers, but never learn how to protect their margins. They celebrate sold-out days without asking the only question that really matters. Did we actually make money? They count meals served instead of dollars kept, and that's where the downfall begins. Picture this. It's a busy Saturday food festival. 300 customers come through your window. The line never seems to end. People are posting your food all over TikTok and Instagram. Your phone keeps buzzing with new followers. Friends are texting. You're absolutely crushing it. Standing inside that truck, it feels like you've made it. But while everyone else is celebrating, your accountant is looking at the exact same day very differently. He isn't counting customers. He's counting 12 straight hours of payroll, rising food costs because demand was higher than expected, diesel for the generator, propane, fuel, festival entry fees, credit card processing charges, insurance, permits, commissary rent, sales tax, and equipment that's one breakdown away from a repair bill worth thousands of dollars. Suddenly, that record-breaking day doesn't look nearly as impressive because the owner measures success by how many people showed up, while the accountant measures success by how much money is left after everyone gets paid. Those are two completely different scoreboards, and the owners who confuse them are usually the ones who disappear first. So before we talk about buying a food truck, let's start with something even more important. Imagine serving your very first 10 customers. Your first few customers feel effortless. The fryer is spotless. The refrigerator is fully stocked. Every ingredient is fresh. Your staff is energized. Every order gets your full attention, and mistakes are almost non-existent because the pace is easy to manage. But fast forward to your 1,000th customer, and it's a completely different business. The fryer oil needs changing. You're running low on key ingredients. Someone burns a batch of fries. The POS system suddenly freezes. A customer demands a refund after waiting 30 minutes. Outside, it's 98 degrees, and the refrigerator is struggling to keep food at a safe temperature. In a matter of minutes, you're juggling 10 different problems while trying to smile, serve customers, and keep the line moving. The burger hasn't changed. The customer hasn't changed. But the economics have changed completely. And that's where so many food truck owners make a costly mistake. They assume every new sale becomes easier because revenue keeps going up. In reality, every additional sale often becomes more difficult because complexity grows faster than income. So here's the question almost nobody asks before buying a food truck. Would you rather serve 500 customers and keep just 5% of every dollar, or serve only 300 customers and keep 25%? Most beginners instinctively chase the bigger sales number because it looks more impressive. Experienced operators chase the bigger margin because they know a business isn't built on how much money comes in, it's built on how much money stays. The owner didn't notice any of this at first. After another sold-out weekend, he looked at the line wrapped around his truck and thought he had finally figured it out. Banks don't care about Instagram likes, but at that moment, neither did he. Customers were posting videos, local news wanted interviews, and every festival invited him back. When the pandemic sent demand for outdoor dining through the roof, he felt like he'd entered the business at the perfect time. Thousands of entrepreneurs across America were buying food trucks for the same reason. It looked like the fastest, cheapest way to own a restaurant. So he kept saying yes to every opportunity. Another festival, another catering job, another weekend on the road. But every mile he drove quietly cost money before he even sold a single meal. Every stop burned fuel. Every trip wore down the tires. The engine needed maintenance. Parking wasn't free. Permits had to be renewed. Suddenly, he wasn't just running a kitchen anymore. He was operating a restaurant, a delivery business, and a commercial vehicle all at once. The customers never saw those costs. They only saw the long lines. The owner only saw record sales. But the bank account told a completely different story. That's the trap almost every first-time food truck owner falls into. They think they're building a food business, when in reality, they're managing a logistics business disguised as a restaurant. And by the time most of them realize the difference, they're already too deep to turn back. The owner was learning that the hardest part of the business had nothing to do with cooking. Every month brought another expense he never planned for. The city required him to rent space in a licensed commissary kitchen just to prep food, clean equipment, and stay compliant. Then the weather turned against him. One rainy weekend wiped out almost an entire week's expected revenue. Heavy traffic made things even worse because every minute stuck behind the wheel was another minute the service window stayed closed. That's when he realized he wasn't just running a restaurant anymore. He was running a logistics company disguised as a restaurant. And that's the part almost every first-time owner overlooks. While beginners chase the biggest crowds, experienced operators chase the best numbers. They care about revenue per hour, profit per stop, food cost percentage, labor efficiency, and how much money each event actually leaves in the bank. That's why a crowded music festival isn't always a better business than a corporate catering job with guaranteed orders and predictable costs. The owner finally understood that driving 40 miles to make an extra $500 wasn't a win if it cost $400 in fuel, labor, food, and operating expenses just to be there. It looked like growth from the outside, but inside the business, the margins were quietly disappearing. And that's the mistake almost every beginner makes before they even realize they're making it. The owner had spent months believing the truck was the business. Eventually, he realized the truck was just the tool. The real business was happening behind the cash register, where every dollar that came in immediately had a dozen expenses waiting to claim it. And that forced him to face the same decision every successful food truck owner eventually faces. Demand kept growing. More festivals wanted to book him. More companies requested catering. More private events filled his calendar. Should he slow down and protect his profit margins, or keep saying yes to every opportunity, hoping bigger revenue would eventually fix smaller profits? Like most beginners, he chose growth. After all, growth feels like success. But business doesn't care how successful you feel. It only cares about the numbers. And sometimes the fastest way to grow is also the fastest way to go broke. That sounds completely backwards until you stop watching the crowds and start following the money. That's exactly what the owner finally did. He stopped celebrating the sales flashing across the PS screen and started asking a much harder question. How much money is actually left after every bill gets paid? The answer shocked him. Every new customer brought in more revenue, but every new customer also brought higher food costs, more packaging, more payroll, more fuel, more wear on the truck, more maintenance, and more operational headaches. The business looked like it was scaling, but the profits weren't keeping up. That's because most people imagine business growth as a straight line, double the customers, double the profit. But a food truck doesn't scale that way. As the crowds get bigger, the operation becomes more complicated, costs rise faster than expected, and the business begins suffering from what I call efficiency decay, the point where every extra sale becomes harder, more expensive, and less profitable than the one before it. The owner didn't realize it at first, but the more customers he served, the less efficient the business became. Every busy weekend created new problems faster than new profits. It's like trying to race across a lake in a boat with a small hole in the bottom. At first, the leak barely matters. You scoop out a little water, and everything feels under control. Then you decide to go faster, so you bolt on a bigger engine. The boat speeds up, but the leak never disappears. Water keeps pouring in, so you add another engine, then another. You're solving the wrong problem. More power doesn't fix a leak. It just lets you travel farther before you sink. That's exactly what happened to him. Every time demand increased, his answer was to buy more inventory, hire another employee, book another festival, and work even longer hours. But he never stopped to fix the economics underneath the business. Each new customer brought more revenue, but they also brought even more pressure. The refrigerator suddenly wasn't big enough. Prep space became overcrowded. The generator struggled to keep up. Employees started making mistakes because they were rushing. Food waste increased because predicting demand became almost impossible. From the outside, the truck looked more successful than ever. From the inside, it was becoming more fragile every single week. And then came the problem that finally caught up with him: cash flow. On paper, the business looked profitable. In reality, the bank account kept getting smaller. One month, he booked 3 massive festivals and thought he'd hit the jackpot. But before he could sell a single meal, he had already spent thousands of dollars on inventory, paid event fees up front, filled the fuel tank, stocked the truck, and committed to employee wages. The money had to leave long before new money had a chance to come in. That's when he discovered one of the most dangerous truths in business. A company can look profitable on paper and still run out of cash in real life. The owner thought the hardest part was getting customers. He was wrong. The hardest part was surviving the weeks before their money actually reached his bank account. Some catering clients didn't pay for 30 days, sometimes even longer. Meanwhile, payroll couldn't wait. Fuel couldn't wait. Suppliers wanted their money immediately. Event organizers expected payment up front. Every bill arrived on time, while the revenue was still somewhere in the future. His bank account started shrinking even though sales looked stronger than ever. That's why cash flow destroys businesses that appear successful from the outside. Revenue can be recorded today, but cash often doesn't arrive until weeks later, while expenses demand payment right now. At first, he convinced himself tomorrow's sales would solve today's cash problems. For a while, they did. Eventually, they didn't. That's when he started studying the operators who survived. He looked at Kogi Barbecue and realized their real innovation wasn't just Korean tacos, it was efficiency. Instead of wasting fuel driving around hoping customers would find them, they used social media to tell people exactly where the truck would be. Customers came to them, increasing sales at every stop while cutting wasted time and operating costs. Then he studied Cousin's Maine Lobster. Most people remembered the Shark Tank investment, but he noticed something far more important. They didn't rush out and buy trucks the moment demand exploded. They built systems first: standardized menus, consistent operations, reliable supply chains, franchise support, and repeatable processes. Only after the business worked on paper did they scale it in real life. That's when the owner finally understood the difference between growing a business and growing a problem. One creates wealth, the other simply multiplies mistakes. And that's exactly where so many food truck owners go wrong. They buy a second truck because the first one had a great summer, without realizing they've only doubled the risks they still haven't solved. The owner thought buying a second truck was the obvious next step. If one truck was making money, 2 had to be even better. At least, that's what he believed. But the moment that second truck hit the road, his business changed overnight. It wasn't just another kitchen. It was another generator, another engine, another set of permits, another insurance policy, another maintenance schedule, another employee team, and twice as many opportunities for something to go wrong. Revenue might have doubled, but complexity grew even faster. That's the hidden tax of growth. Bigger isn't automatically better. Bigger only works when every new dollar of revenue costs less to earn than the one before it. Otherwise, growth becomes a liability instead of an advantage. Then came the problem he never saw coming: downtime. If a traditional restaurant loses a fryer, it can usually keep serving part of the menu. But when a food truck loses its transmission, the entire business disappears until it's repaired. Every hour sitting in a repair shop means zero revenue, while loan payments, insurance, payroll, and other fixed expenses continue draining the bank account. One engine failure can erase months of profit. A transmission replacement can wipe out an entire season. Experienced operators understand this, which is why they don't treat repair bills as bad luck. They budget for them long before they happen because every commercial vehicle eventually breaks down. That's when the owner finally realized realized something he should have understood from the beginning. His biggest asset wasn't the food. It wasn't the truck. It was the system behind the truck. The systems determined how fast the team could prep food, how accurately inventory was ordered, how efficiently employees worked, how quickly customers received their meals, and whether every sale actually turned into profit. Without strong systems, every new customer made the business harder to manage. With strong systems, growth became predictable and profitable. But he learned that lesson too late. Every successful weekend convinced him to book an even bigger event. Every record-breaking month gave him the confidence to spend even more. He thought bigger crowds would eventually fix smaller margins. Instead, they only made the cracks in the business grow wider until they could no longer be ignored. The owner thought he was solving the problem by working harder, booking bigger events, and saying yes to every opportunity. In reality, he was doing exactly what someone does with a leaking boat, installing a bigger engine instead of fixing the hole. For a while, it looked like it was working. Revenue climbed. The lines got longer. Social media kept celebrating his success. But eventually, the numbers caught up. Not because customers disappeared. Not because a competitor stole his business. Not because the economy suddenly turned against him. The business collapsed because its own math finally demanded payment. Growth didn't save a broken business model. It exposed it. When we followed every dollar from the moment a customer placed an order until the money finally reached the bank account, one uncomfortable truth became impossible to ignore. The truck wasn't failing because it lacked demand. It was failing because every new sale became harder, more expensive, and less profitable than the one before it. That's a problem no amount of hustle can solve. Only better economics can. And that's why the biggest myth about food trucks is so dangerous. People think it's a cheap way to own a restaurant. It isn't. It's simply a cheaper ticket into one of the toughest industries in America. Before the owner ever served his first customer, he had already invested tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in the truck itself. Then came the endless list of expenses nobody talks about: business licenses, health permits, fire inspections, commercial auto insurance, liability coverage, commissary kitchen rent, fuel, generator maintenance, propane, PS software, payroll taxes, packaging, marketing, cleaning supplies, credit card processing fees, and inventory that loses money every day it sits unsold. Suddenly, those record-breaking weekends didn't look nearly as impressive. Food costs swallowed a large share of every sale. Labor took another bite. Fuel, maintenance, insurance, event fees, loan payments, and operating expenses kept taking the rest. A $15 burger might leave only $3 or $4 after everyone had been paid. That's why experienced operators don't celebrate revenue. They measure gross margin, contribution margin, and cash flow. They know sales don't create wealth. Profits do. Looking back, the owner realized his biggest mistake happened long before he bought the truck. He bought the asset first and tried to figure out the business afterward. The operators who actually build lasting companies do the exact opposite. They prove demand before making big investments. They start with catering contracts because they already know how many meals they'll sell before the engine even starts. They park near office parks with predictable lunch traffic. They focus on weddings, breweries, and corporate events where demand is guaranteed instead of gambling on crowded festivals. Because the smartest food truck owners aren't chasing the biggest crowds, they're chasing the highest profit per hour. The owner eventually stopped asking why other food trucks looked so much more successful than his and started studying how they actually operated. That's when he looked back at Cousin's Maine Lobster and realized their success had very little to do with lobster rolls. Their trucks made money because every location followed the same repeatable system. The recipes were standardized. Purchasing was efficient. Branding stayed consistent. Every new franchise wasn't just buying another truck, it was buying a business model that had already been proven to work. That's what investors care about. They don't invest in recipes. They invest in predictable economics. The more he studied, the more he noticed the same pattern everywhere. Shake Shack didn't become a global company because of a single hot dog cart. The cart was only the beginning. The real value came from building a system that could be repeated over and over again without breaking. And that's when the owner realized the mistake he'd been making all along. He hadn't built a business. He had built himself a job. If the truck only made money when he was standing inside it for 12 hours a day, then every vacation, every sick day, and every day off meant revenue stopped the moment he stopped working. That realization forced him to ask a question every entrepreneur should answer. If I disappeared for the next 30 days, would this business keep making money, or would it stop the moment I walked away? The answer separates a true asset from nothing more than a paycheck. Too many owners confuse being busy with creating value. They work 80-hour weeks, weeks, celebrate record sales on social media, and still earn less than someone working a regular office job because they've built a machine that consumes their time instead of producing wealth. That's why experienced operators eventually stop asking, "How can I sell more food?" and start asking a much smarter question: "How can I make every sale more profitable?" Maybe it's simplifying the menu to reduce inventory waste. Maybe it's cutting low-margin items that only slow down the kitchen. Maybe it's negotiating better supplier prices or choosing events that require less driving. Because in the end, improving profit by just $1 on every meal served can create far more wealth than chasing another $1,000 in sales. So, what happened to the owner we started with? The crowded food truck, the endless lines, the sold-out lunch rushes, the viral TikTok videos, none of it saved him. Today, that truck sits exactly where we left it, parked behind a warehouse. The generator is silent. The windows are closed. The social media posts stopped months ago. The customers simply moved on to the next viral food truck, but the loan payments never did. Most people looking from the outside will come up with an easy explanation. They'll say he wasn't tough enough. They'll blame the competition, inflation, or bad luck. But none of those things tell the real story. He didn't lose because people stopped loving his food. He lost because he believed growth could fix weak economics. Every time the business struggled, his answer was to work longer hours, book bigger festivals, and chase more revenue. He kept pressing the accelerator while the engine was quietly running out of oil. By the time the warning lights came on, the damage had already been done. And that's a lesson that reaches far beyond food trucks. History is filled with entrepreneurs who had incredible work ethic, endless optimism, and customers who genuinely loved what they sold. But admiration doesn't pay invoices. Passion doesn't repair engines. Long lines don't create healthy cash flow. Eventually, every business, whether it's a food truck, a software startup, or a Fortune 500 company, is forced to answer the exact same question. Does this business actually make money, or does it only look successful from the outside? You can beat competitors. You can survive recessions. You can reinvent your menu, but you cannot outrun bad unit economics. In the end, every great company lives or dies by the same set of numbers. Revenue creates excitement. Profit creates survival. Cash flow creates freedom. Build those first, and growth becomes your greatest advantage. Ignore them, and growth becomes the fastest road to bankruptcy. The owner learned that lesson only after losing everything. You don't have to, because at the end of the day, customers buy the food, investors buy the business, but the math decides who survives. Build for the math, not the aesthetic.